You've probably been looking through your seed catalogs all spring and getting excited over all the different choices of flowers available for your garden. You may have ordered some seed, or you may be planning to go to a garden center to buy transplants in a few weeks. In any case, we want to show you the vast array of things that will do well in Oklahoma with specific care for each one. Now here are sweet Allysum plants. It comes in white, also a nice purple. There are also some color ranges in between those two. Now, Allysum can be direct seeded in the garden, or you can raise your own transplants. It grows very fast. It gives nice spring color in the garden and very, very sweet fragrance. Now, if you want more of a blue color, here's a plant that I think you'll enjoy growing on the north side of your house, maybe in a window box, someplace that's a little protected. It's called Lobelia, and these tiny blue flowers have very, very intense blue color. It's very attractive in the garden. Another plant that likes fairly cool conditions is the Begonia, and this is a hanging basket of it. You've probably seen this used more and more in commercial landscapes. There are some new forms of Begonia that are more and more heat tolerant, although it's a good idea if you have it in partial shade at least, especially in very hot situations. Some other plants that you may be considering putting out in your yard, here's some that have a bright scarlet color. Geraniums are one. In the more northern climates, they do well all summer long in window boxes. In Oklahoma, probably you want to give them partial shade or some means of keeping them somewhat cool through the summer. If you're going to put them out in a whiskey barrel or some other container, make sure that you slip the container they're planted in down in a larger container and insulate in between. That'll keep the roots cooler and keep them producing better all summer. And then also there's Salvia. Some people see this in garden centers. The plants aren't this big. This one's been growing in a greenhouse, and so it's extra large. But again, that'll give you bright scarlet color in the garden. If you want foliage color, you could try Coleus. That'll grow easily from seed. It propagates readily from cuttings and comes in many, many colors. In fact, I'll just lift up this entire tray here to show you the array of colors available. That's very nice in the shade to give you a range of color. Last of all, for color in the garden, there are always the standard zinnias that you can sow directly from seed. That's a good one to get your kids started in gardening, and they make a great cut flower. And they come in sizes ranging from 1.5 feet tall all the way up to maybe 4 feet tall. Last of all, as an annual, we have marigolds, and the reason I group these with the early summer flowers is invariably spider mites will take over marigolds in Oklahoma in mid to late summer. Some people want to put them in their vegetable gardens because they feel that they will repel pests. They may repel nematodes, but they'll bring spider mites to your garden. So for my money, it's not worth it.
Now, many of us in our gardens have spots that are really hot and exposed, perhaps on the west or the southwest side, or maybe next to a sidewalk or a driveway where it really gets intensely hot during the summertime, and we're looking for plants that will fit well into those areas. And we do have a wide range and variety of plants that you can put in these locations, but keep in mind that these plants do like a full day of sun and in fact thrive in hot locations. This is the Verbena. We have many, many colors of Verbena to choose from. There's pinks and there's roses and there's purples and variegated colors with white and rose and white and purple on them. So I think if you look for Verbenas, you're going to find a lot of choices for these hot, dry locations. Other plants that you may want to look at in to place in some of the hotter locations that also have some color are the Portulaca. Now this one is not blooming yet, although we do have some color beginning to show on the tips of some of this Portulaca, but it is a plant that will spread well, make a nice little ground cover. Oftentimes it's referred to as rose moss because of the variety of colors in the flower and also the shape of the flower. It resembles and reminds us much of a rose. And also, this is one plant that does very well in a hanging basket as well as planted in a ground bed. Also, we may look at some plants for containers. For example, the Sedum. We know we also have many, many different types of sedum. Here are just two types here. Sedum does very well in planter containers such as the strawberry jar, but it also do well in a rock garden or again in a hot, dry location next to a sidewalk or on a slope perhaps that you may have difficulty in watering or in the soil holding water. Because the sedum is a succulent plant, it will do well in these locations. And then also another plant that likes dry locations, of course, is the Yarrow. And in Oklahoma, we have a variety of yarrow that we can grow. Yarrow that has a white blossom as well as the yellow blossom yarrow that we have here. This also makes a nice plant to add some different color and texture of foliage in the garden, and also some difference in height. And also we know that yarrow dries quite well, so it'd make a nice dried flower for use in dried flower arrangements later on. So these are just some of those that really withstand those really hot, dry locations. And of course we can't forget the canna. The canna is another plant that does well in Oklahoma in a full exposed location. Cannas come in a variety of ranges in color as also as sizes. And if you're wanting to grow canna in your garden now, you can go ahead and get your rhizomes, or if you've overwintered your rhizomes, you can get those started in a pot. You get a little bit of growth on those and set those out after the soil is warmed up. But if you pot them up and get them started now in a cold frame, or perhaps in a sunny location inside the house, then you're going to get, of course, some added growth on those. There are a few plants that are transitional that can grow either in a half a day sun or perhaps in a full day sun in some shady locations. For example, the snapdragons. The snapdragons, again, come in many sizes, shapes, and colors. So all you need to do is look around in your garden center and look for some of these different types of plants. And one last thing before some really shade-loving plants that Sue has to show you, I want to mention that there are some new plants that you may want to try. This is called the bush yellow daisy, or the yellow bush daisy, I guess to be exact. This is a plant you may not find in the garden center, but I want to challenge you to look through your seed catalogs and see if you can't find some different types of plants to grow in the seed catalogs and try it, because that's the fun of gardening, is trying some new and different things. I think Sue has some really nice plants also for shady locations.
Yes, I think one of the queens of shade growing beds would be the Hosta. Now, Hosta is a perennial plant grown for its foliage. Some people also call it plantain lily. It has a beautiful spike of either white or lavender flowers later in the summer, but mostly it's grown for its foliage. Now, there are many forms of Hosta available. Some of them are deep green like this. Some are 2 or 3 times this size in foliage and a blue-green. There are others that are white with a green margin and vice versa. There are some that are gold colored. Now on Hosta, it likes shade, it likes a rich organic soil, but the downside of that is that slugs love hostas. So if you're going to grow these, make sure you keep some diatomaceous earth around the base of it to keep them away. A few other plants that love the shade. One is the New Guinea Impatiens. Also regular Impatiens love the shade. Now the New Guinea Impatiens are a fairly new introduction to us. Keep in mind that they love water. In fact, you probably need to water them every day and keep them in the shade and keep them cool. One last thing, for a ground cover that will give you some light appearance in the shade, some white to bounce back in the shade for contrast, this is bishop's weed. It's also called gout weed. Makes a great ground cover. If you try to grow it in full sun, those spider mites can be a problem.
So we only have about a week left until St. Patrick's Day too, and you have a nice shamrock plant.
That's right, have a shamrock plant, and you can grow shamrocks out in your garden in Oklahoma. Some of you may know it for just a house plant, but it will do well if it has shade and plenty of moisture.
Well, we hope that today's program has given you some ideas and some tips on what you might look for when you're planting your garden, and also on some of the plants that you may want to put in your garden when you start actually planting out there. There are a lot of things to choose from, so go out and visit your garden centers, your local plants dealers, and see what they have that you may also want to try in your own garden this year.
Thanks for joining us today on Oklahoma Gardening.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.